This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Friday, December 12th, 2025, and I've got the excellent Max Weinbach with me here. Hi, Max. How are you?
Oh, hello, Miriam. I'm doing very well.
Great. Listen, I went to the Rivian event yesterday. You watched it remotely, and I want to talk about that first because, you know, you and I cover, the technology in cars and, autonomy, EVs, that kind of stuff. You as an analyst, me as a journalist. And even though my audience is not, necessarily like going to get in the weeds with us as much as, they would like to, I think it'd be interesting for them to get maybe a feel, since we both cover phones as well, to kind of relate it to them, what we saw yesterday and how it fits together in the general vibe of tech, right? And then we'll talk about some phone stuff as well. So if you're listening right now, don't run away. We've got some good phone stuff for you later on in the show. But what's your take on this Rivian thing? Like, as a kind of like stepping back, looking at it from a distance a day later, what are your feelings?
I was very impressed. I remain impressed, but there were the two parts to it. One was Rivian Assistant in their infotainment stack for agentic AI to do everything for you, and then the other one was their autonomy stack. Right. I think both are actually incredibly impressive for what they've been doing, and I feel very confident that Rivian is now a pretty good competitor to Tesla in terms of autonomy, or could be.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of my takeaway as well. I have to say, I came away very impressed, mostly because I'm very happy when I see a company doing this kind of vertical integration that we saw yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I saw a lot of the feedback on Twitter and in the markets afterwards where a lot of people weren't happy that Rivian was doing vertical integration. They thought the R&D spend on a custom chip wasn't worth it. They didn't have the compute, the capital to actually train these types of models or do it. And I think that's just kind of missing the point of why they would want to do it at vertical integration in the first place.
I think it's really short-sighted, to be honest, actually, because we've seen again and again. I mean, we have examples, not necessarily in the car tech world, but we do in the car tech world too. But if you go back, right, like I always use the analogy, and you tell me what you think, because you've been around long enough now that you know what I'm talking about. 15 years ago, smartphones, it was the freaking Wild West. Remember that? We had HTC Sense, TouchWiz, all these horrible experiences that just didn't feel very, together, like very, very, and then Apple was always kind of doing this whole nicely vertically integrated thing. And, if you look at Samsung now, they're super doing their, as much as possible, the highly integrated thing. I mean, they're make their own displays, their own camera sensors. I mean, there we go. And then, you see others and they're doing the same as much as they can. Xiaomi is a big example of that as well. They make cars now. So I think that in 15 years, this tech has shown like that the phone tech, the consumer tech has shown that what Rivian and Tesla, particularly Tesla, who started the whole thing, in my opinion, has been doing is the way to go forward, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, why would they be surprised by that? I guess they haven't looked back 15 years at what the smartphone world did, right?
And if we can even go beyond that, Apple Silicon for Mac. I mean, the Macs are by far the best laptops, just period. I think that's just a blanket statement.
100%. 100%.
And that was all because of the vertical integration.
Yeah. And, speaking of which, this is actually a pretty good segue to kind of get in the weeds about that chip, because the first thought, and again, you're way more like tuned in than I am on this thing, but I saw this chip and I was like, they did basically what we've seen Apple do 5 years ago on the M1 chips, where they mounted the memory right on the package alongside the SoC. And let's be real here. It is a system on a chip, fully integrated, does a whole bunch of stuff. It has an AP. It has, of course, a whole bunch of, NPU type stuff, because that's what its main purpose is. But I think this was the first thing that fascinated me. It was like, and then creating some sort of interconnect so that you can have multiple chips on the same board. They call it RivLink. Again, that's something we saw right when, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's not at the same level architecturally, but when we saw Apple take the ultra chips or whatever they were, where they were like kind of like pairing them together. Is that more or less what I'm thinking here?
It's
or
a
is
little
this
bit different.
okay?
Rivlink it's a low latency interconnect, so you can have two chips on a board that can talk to each other millisecond latency. The Apple's is taking two chips and fusing them together to package into one.
Oh,
So
in the
Rivian still
package,
has
right,
two
right. You're
individual
right.
chips.
I forgot that they're
Apple's
not
just one.
separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apple's technically a chiplet. Rivian's just chip interconnect.
Cool. So that to me was interesting. And also, some of those numbers, you probably have a better point of reference since you follow, the AI compute side more than I do. Like, where do you rate this chip to be from their advertised numbers right now? Like, is it, like compared to say some NVIDIA products, compared to maybe since my audience is mostly focusing on smartphones, could you give us a baseline comparison as to like, how does this fit in terms of NPU performance compared to like the SoCs that we're familiar with that we use on smartphones right now?
So they have two chips per board, one board per computer. So
Correct.
they advertise 1600 sparse tops, which is 800 dense tops. Dense tops matter more for the transformer models because it's just a bunch of math I don't really want to get into. When they train it, it's just going to be roughly 800 tops of performance per computer. Tesla, I believe, is about 500 tops of performance. This is all int 8. When we compare this to a smartphone, Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is about 80 tops of performance.
Okay.
So we're looking at roughly 5 times more AI compute than a smartphone chip.
Okay. So that puts us in perspective.
Know, yeah. And that is, again, it's roughly, I don't know, 60-ish% more than Tesla's. But it's also a newer node, like this is a 3 or 4 year newer chip. It's a couple generations ahead in terms of nodes and design.
So would you say it's pretty competitive? They pretty much have state of the art stuff. And do you think, how much do you think they did in house, and how much do you think they got help from like ARM and TSMC for this?
I would say if we are looking at a vertically integrated chip, they're probably state of the art. I don't have NVIDIA's Blackwell Orin chip off the top of my head, their numbers. It's likely competitive there, but because they are designing, as they said, the software and the hardware, they get better peak performance using their own. Even if
again, vertical integration and iteration, right? Velocity is another thing they talked about, which I think is really important for people to understand, is that in this fast-moving world of autonomy in vehicles, meaning AI, the tools that are used to develop the software are tightly, related to the hardware, and this is always the case. If you create this hardware in-house, you can create the software in-house simultaneously and test it and iterate way faster than if you have an external vendor that comes along like NVIDIA and gives you a chip, and then you have to like wait for them to be ready with their chip before you can start creating the tools, right?
Yeah, before they had the chip even printed, the dies cut, they were already running the software about a year ahead.
Yeah. So I think this is, this is interesting to me because they're like, really not just taking advantage of, we want to own the IP, we want to do our own thing. It's not about that. It's about velocity. It's about, performance. It's about a bunch of things that we see, the successful, highly integrated companies out there do as well, like Tesla, like Apple, like maybe to a lesser extent, Samsung. They seem to be a little bit more out there, a little lost right now, I feel, in their ability to integrate vertically, considering how much they do in-house. I think because, like Sony, we've seen this with Sony over the years where their divisions are so compartmentalized and so siloed, that there's like, they don't talk enough to each other to really get that, momentum of vertical integration that we see Apple and Tesla do, right? So yeah, that's kind of my takeaway was like, wow, like I got the materials under embargo in advance. So I kind of went into this presentation yesterday at Rivian with a little bit of knowledge. But I have to say, no offense to our lovely Rivian PR folks, the thing they sent us in advance just didn't give it justice. Like it seemed like a jumbled mess when I was reading that press release. And I was just like, then when I saw the presentation up there with the 4 people that went up on stage, some of which I've talked to in person, like RJ and Wasim, it was, oh my God, it makes so much more sense now. It was very disjointed. I felt like they're embargoed content. So seeing it in person, I was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now.
I think like it's an impressive chip too. I completely missed the did they design it? It was co-done with ARM, so it's an SoC. So it has the neural compute that they probably designed themselves, and then you have ARM safety and security cores, which were the Cortex R series, and then CPU cores, which are the A720AE, which are automotive 725 cores, the same as you'd actually find in like a MediaTek phone. But those are just designed for automotive. Whatever, I think it's 17 of those. And then I believe they worked with Marvell on the backside design. So all of the specs of the neural accelerators, whatever's the front side, backside, you need someone to package it and kind of bring it all together. And I believe that was Marvell doing it. So it's still Rivian designed and IP packaged in partnership with ARM and Marvell, I think.
Yeah. And then TSMC manufactures it. Tell me more, because you're probably more in touch with what the car manufacturers are doing in terms of in-house chips and you know, the state of the art there. I was a little surprised here is 5 nanometers. I mean, obviously, you know, that's pretty good. Efficiency is going to be pretty good. And we want efficiency in an EV. And everything matters. Once you start adding computers, you start draining the battery. And that means less range, right? So you want an efficient chip. But I was like, I'm surprised they didn't go with like 4 or 3 nanometers. I guess 4 has been deprecated, right? Like they don't make 4 nanometer chips much anymore. It's either 5 or 3, right?
Yeah, they still do some 4 nanometer capacity, but 4 was more of a extension of 5 nanometers. So
correct, yeah.
You know, yeah. But they use the TSMC 5 nanometer automotive node. I'm not sure the difference is, but there's something to it. I have to actually look into that.
It's probably like solar radiation and stuff, you know, like this probably like more bulletproof, like in terms of longevity. Yeah, it's got to be, you know, there's a lot of really strict standards there. It's like aerospace and you know, aircraft have to use certain standards for that kind of stuff. Aircraft in particular are closer to the sun up there. There's no protection from the atmosphere, unless they're still in the atmosphere. So there's some protection. But anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think in terms of like cost, I think it's like 22,000 a wafer for 3 nanometer versus 12 to 15 for 5 nanometer.
Matters too, right?
It does. So, and then you're not fighting for capacity against Apple and Nvidia and Google and everyone else who has way more resources than Rivian. So it's just, it makes sense to stay back a little bit. You get the safety, you get the security, you get the volume and scale that TSMC can offer on a slightly older node. And realistically, is it going to make much of a difference? Probably not, because this is in a car. It looks like it was liquid cooled. Yeah. You're power constrained, but not that power constrained, where sure, if you can get maybe 20% better performance at the same energy, fine, but that's not make or break on probably an 100-watt system, 150-watt system. So there's no need for the cutting edge today.
Yeah, no, I get that. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of let's move on to talk about another thing that seems very controversial. I mean, I'm not on X as much as you are, and I know because you have a bigger audience there than I do, but like I saw some reactions, people really being upset that there was LiDAR, that like, come on, you know, Tesla's shown us that we can do this with vision only, and why would you throw LiDAR in there and complicate things and have diffuse sensors and, you know, keep the radars. Tesla does have radar though, right? They got rid of it and brought it back?
It's only in the inside. So they have a cabin radar to detect heart rate, body size, and whatnot.
Got it.
So they can use it for cabin detection as well as airbags. So it can it can deploy an airbag. If you're a smaller person, it's not going to deploy the airbags with as much force.
Yeah, no, I get that. I didn't know if they had added, because there was for a while, there were rumors of the Model S and Model X getting the front radar back, the higher resolution front radar or something. So they're vision only 100%. Yeah. And, you know, again, I personally see the benefits of adding LiDAR if they can keep the costs down. And I think LiDAR prices have dropped drastically over the years. And I think that we've seen in the demos, at least that they showed us, you saw them, they were actually in the presentation. You do get to see stuff earlier on, and you do get to see stuff that vision catches only later. And in that sense, it's safer. So I'm not against it, but I thought the reaction online was a bit weird. I'm like, come on, like, you know, like Rivian is a different company than Tesla. They're not trying to copy Tesla. They're trying to take the best of what they can do in-house. And right now, the best that they can do in-house is use LiDAR, and so be it.
And I think sometimes some people think, oh, well, if one approach works, why recreate it? Well, it works for Tesla because when they made this decision in early 2020, give or take, maybe 2019, they didn't have a choice. I mean, this was the idea of transformer models powering this wasn't a thing, which solves the issues of sensor fusion and latency. Like
Right.
At the time when they made the decision and started putting R&D focus into it, it was a completely different landscape. LiDAR
And
was
LiDAR
very
was super
Radar
expensive
wasn't
then,
good.
right?
It was like everything then made sense, and Tesla made it work today. And does Tesla need to go add all this stuff back? No, they're fine. They can go vision only. It works for them. But that's not the same for Rivian. Rivian's not the same company. They don't have the same R&D resources.
And they don't have the data.
They don't. So that was the other part where they said LiDAR adds great ground truth for training the fleet. It does. Tesla still goes out with LiDAR and they record LiDAR versus vision and then train the model to see you need to, because these are mono lenses. They don't get stereoscopic vision. So in order to see in 3D to understand space, you need to train on LiDAR ground truth versus vision so the model can understand it. Rivian still needs to do the same thing. So shipping the cars with LiDAR helps them train that data in the first place. It's just instead of paying people to go drive hundreds of thousands of miles to do it, Rivian's using the cars with it. It makes sense. They need it at the start.
That makes perfect sense to me. And Tesla did the same thing, right? I mean, I think I think a lot of people do not understand this, what you just said, that Tesla does use cars out there with LiDARs mounted on them to validate the ground truth and make sure that they have a set of data that can check that their vision only system is accurate in various situations. And, so the difference being that, Rivian's chosen to add a clearly much more affordable than 5 years ago, what Tesla had the option to get, a LiDAR device that's forward facing only, right? And they're not doing like Waymo, who's putting radar on 4 corners or something like that, or there's more than that. They have what, like 6 or 7? I don't know. Like
I think they have one LiDAR on the top, one on each corner, and then radar.
Yeah, and then there's one in the
too.
front, one in the back, like front center and back center as well. They're tiny. The side ones are flat on the Waymo. I'm talking about the Jaguars, but since they're around here in San Francisco a lot, like these big flat boxes like this, you can clearly see the glass, are the corners. And that could be both a radar or a LiDAR, I'm not sure. And then they have the spinny thing on top, and then they have the spinny things on the corners, and there's 2 spinny things front and back. It's obviously old stuff, right? Like nowadays, you'd probably use solid state like that, what Rivian is using, which is
I think they're doing that in the Hyundai, so Gen 6 platform for Waymo.
Yeah, okay. And the Zeekr probably as well doesn't have the spinny things. So anyway, the point I'm making is that I think LiDAR is a good idea. I'm a little disappointed. I'm going to be honest. This is... there's some faux pas that Rivian's done over the years. The first one was when they increased the price of the R1, like in the first year or whatever, and pissed off a lot of I have it on good authority. I'm not going to mention who gave me that info, but I have it on good authority that the PR folks were not at all on board with that decision. So, but speaking of, odd decisions, well, it's less of a problem with the R1 because the R1 was out as a Gen 1 product for a few years before they went to Gen 2 and updated the entire computer system to a fully in-house, zonal architecture with much better computers and much less wiring and much better sensors and all that. So, but what I'm getting to is that you buy a Gen 2 R1 or R1S right now, you're getting way better compute and sensors and architecture, electrical architecture than Gen 1 product. And that in the same way as like my 2018 Model 3 had much lesser compute and sensor capabilities than my 2021 Model 3, right? And that you had a Model 3 for a while. I think you have a Model Y now. But your Model 3 was the first Highland, and it's probably already, your Model Y is probably better in terms of compute. So that's the way it goes, right? But what I'm a little bummed here is that they're going to launch the R2 with the old hardware and without the LiDAR early next year, or like Q1 or something, 2026. And then later in the year, maybe Q3 or like literally a few months later, relaunch it with the LiDAR and this hardware 3 chip that we just talked about, and the dual chip computer. I would wait. And I told them that. I was like, don't you think you're shooting yourselves in the foot? Like you're doing an Osborne thing, the Osborne effect. And I'm like people who know are going to wait. Yes, you have reservation holders. Yes, people are really eager for you to come out with the R2, but like, why didn't you why not delay the launch of the R2 at this point? Or why not fast track the hardware rollout I don't know. That seems really weird to me. That seems disappointing to me.
I agree, but I think I could be wrong, but the way I was reading it is the LiDAR is an optional like step up where you have to pay extra for it, and it doesn't come
That's
standard.
not what
So
they told
standard
us.
Gen
They
3
said that as soon as they can put it in every R2, they will, because they want the data. So basically, you're going to get an R2 without LiDAR and with the old compute system, and then you're going to get later in the same year an R2 with the LiDAR and the this Rivian system, the new.
So what if they
3.
sell the Gen 3 as a step up? So they'll sell the two of them side by side for a bit, and then if you want the Autonomy Plus, you get in the high end, and then slowly they phase it over. It's still, no matter how they do it, it doesn't really make sense, and it kind of screws people over.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand this. Like, they're so smart. Every time I talk to RJ and the team, everybody there's just on top of it. And like, the presentation shows that they were on top of it. And then I'm like, what the hell is this kind of marketing you're doing here? Like, I understand you have investors. I understand you need this stuff out there as soon as you can. I'm on board. I want to see the R2 real bad. I'm not going to buy one, but I'm waiting for the R3X personally. But I'm like, don't screw this up. Like, this seems like I can see a lot of tech savvy early adopters going, if it's a year or two, I can understand. You lease one for a year or two, you're good. But if it's 3 months, let's just wait 3 months and just get the LiDAR and the better compute hardware. I don't know. It's odd to me.
As much as I agree, because I am with you, I just wait to do it. I think if you look at Tesla's FSD take rate, it's like 13, 16, maybe 20% now with V4. It's still low enough that, let's say, those 20% of people that care, 80% that don't. The 80% can get what they want immediately, not have to wait. The 20% will wait and still get the car later. Like, it's a little disappointing, yes.
And there's a lot of people who don't want any kind of or don't really care too much about anything level 2 beyond the highway, like autopilot delivery, right?
And it's going to get a better version than what they have now. It's what the LDM will roll out early next year, and that'll be good enough for most people that care about what they have now. And then in the future, if you want the full level 4, they'll have it. And by the time it's actually real, every car that they sell will have the hardware for it.
Yeah. So speaking of which, what do you think? I mean, they didn't give us timelines, but what do you think of that, that list they showed on the screen on the presentation, culminating with what they call personal level 4? Like, how realistically can they achieve this, and what's the timing going to look like in your opinion, based on what you know?
Again, you had better details being there, but from watching it, it didn't seem like they gave a timeline to personal level 4. No. It just seemed like, hey, we will do this in the future. Right. But the timeline they gave was point to point, and then hands off next year, and then in the future, eyes off, then personal level 4.
Correct.
So that eyes off personal level 4 being 27, 28, 29. Right. Sure. I think they'll be fine on that. Hands off, I mean, Tesla has it now. They've had it for years at this point. Yeah. And BMW, everyone had like that. I think will be fine. The point to point on non-highway roads is where I think we're getting into I don't know which versions of FSD you've used. If you have your Model S there, version 12 and 13 aren't great. You still have to really babysit the car. I think we're going to get something like that for the foreseeable future.
So I never got past 13. I never paid for it. So I tried it when it was free, and my car, the lease expired summer 24. So I haven't really driven any FSD since summer 24. Although I am trying right now to get my hands on some of the newer cars to try out the 14
newest version of FSD is incredible. I was using it earlier. I set it to, I had to drop my dad off at a Ford dealership for some software recall on a Bronco. And
oh man, old car manufacturers are so screwed. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I just type in the address, hit start on my car, and select go drop them off curbside. And it just goes and does it. You don't have to do anything. Wow. It's it's the first version where it feels like I'm in a Waymo equivalent.
And this is a Model Y you have, correct, with the hardware 4 stack? Okay. Yeah.
So the only difference between this and the Model 3 Highland or Model SX or the old Model Ys is that it's a front bumper camera. And the front bumper camera helps the car see the road a little bit better. So
they added the front bumper camera and the very basic blinker stock back to the Highland, correct? I believe that's been done now, right? So if you buy a Model 3 Highland right now, you get the blinker stock, but you still have all the other controls on the wheel. Like you can't pull the blinker stock to do a high beam flash. You have to use the button on the wheel, I believe.
I think that's fine. I actually like the wheel buttons a lot.
I personally, the only issue I have with wheel buttons is the blinkers, because I've been driving for 30 plus years. And for me, it's the ability to be able to do it independently of where the angle of the wheel is. And because I drive a lot, kind of sporty drives out in the windy roads, it's really nice to have control of the blinker in a way where I'm not having to fumble and worry about my angle of the wheel and looking at the wheel. So the rest of it, I really don't care. Like, I think one of the things that it is super underrated and people underestimate on Teslas, and at least the Model 3 and Model Y, is the fact that there's 2 scroll wheels that can be remapped dynamically. Like the fact that if you hit the wash the windscreen button, which, on the older cars at the end of the blinker stock, you get a menu that pops up. And at that point, I can't remember if it's the left or the right scroll wheel, but one of the scroll wheels lets you change the speed if you want to override the auto wipers. And the same thing happens with the lights. So if you want to override the lights for some reason, you can do that. And that to me is like, it makes perfect sense to not have buttons for these two things, or just a single button that activates the menu, and then use the feedback on the wheel with the scroll wheels is so good that you get that, essentially, that haptics that you're missing from if you had to use a touchscreen to do it. You don't. So, and I think, it's the same way as like vestigial power buttons in EVs. They drive me nuts. It's like, you don't need that. Like Tesla solved this problem years ago with the brake pedal. Like, and people are like, but what, I want to turn on the car while when I'm not driving. Well, just get in the car, don't push the freaking brake, and then your screen will be on, and you can use the climate, and you can put it in camp mode or dog mode, and like, just think differently. Like, just stop thinking like you were thinking before. It drives me crazy. But to be fair, at the same time, one of the things I really miss on cars that are really heavily software defined and have heavily touchscreen controls, I would love to see, and Lucid does this, a temperature up and down and a fan up and down button. I'm not always using the auto mode on my climate. Sometimes I just want to like manually set the fan speed, and just having that without having to look. You're driving along again these curvy roads, and I just want to like crank the temperature 2 notches, and now I have to look at the screen.
Have you seen the sexy knob? It's a third-party thing.
I think you can buy aftermarket. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, here's the reality, guys. If you have a Highland without the stocks, you can buy stocks for it, and they'll
retrofit them now. It's $500.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Oh, they actually retrofit them at Tesla now? Because for a while you had to do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that, you can do that. And Xiaomi has that, on their SU7 and YU7 has that bar that magnetically like clunches on. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is some car companies are not doing that. BMW is putting this stuff on the screen. And I'm trying to say that, what if you had a button somewhere like on the steering wheel that brought up the climate menu, and you can then control it with the scroll wheels? Like, you don't actually have to have a physical control. I just want to have some control that I can use without looking. And for that, the steering wheel could take that role dynamically.
I think the idea further, like even with autonomy, is you shouldn't need to touch the steering wheel, so you can use the screen and not have to worry about it too.
There's the whole
that's the Tesla approach to it.
No, of course. But again, for me, that's the thing that I've always been found interesting with Tesla. They make cars that drive really well if you're an enthusiast like me who likes to drive your own car without the autonomy. And then at the same time, their whole approach is like, we're all going to be driven and we're not going to have a steering wheel and pedals. Like, and I get that, but I'm just like, why this dichotomy? Like, why can't I have both? Why can't I have awesome steering wheel, brake, and whatever manual control feedback and all that excitement and fun that I have in a car, doing it all myself? And then when I don't want it, when I lend my car to my grandma, or when I'm doing a long road trip to Vegas from SF, point to point, FSD, like, that's kind of where I'm at. I kind of want the best of both worlds. And I feel like cars, like the Model Y,
two teams trying to fight against each other, where you have one that wants really great driving cars for the, like the Model Y Performance. I actually ordered one. I'm waiting for it to come in early January. And then you have the autonomy side. So I feel like at some point it's going to get figured out where you can, you just sit in the back if you want the autonomy, or get in the driver's seat if you want to drive.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And and on top of that, you add the versatility of a car like a Model Y. It's not just the Model Y. There's like Ioniq 5, EV6, all these, kind of essentially what's replaced the station wagon. There's the crossover today that everybody loves. But on EVs, I feel that they're a better experience than the ICE ones, obviously. So I'm never a big fan of crossovers and SUVs, but I have to say that the form factor lends itself much better to an EV. And so, when you look at cars like, an Ioniq 5 EV6 Model Y, they're much more car-like because they're EVs. And they drive fantastic. And, and you have all this practicality built in, right? Like you have a frunk, you have, although the frunk on the EGMP cars has shrunk drastically since they added the heat pump. Same with Ford, by the way. The Mach-E, the new Mach-E has the stock now for the park drive reverse.
Oh, really?
Copying the Model Y and Model 3 in the early days when they had the separate stocks. Yeah. They've gotten rid of that stupid park drive
the wheels were annoying.
Wheel thing. Who does, if you're going to do the wheel thing, who does it right is, again, EGMP cars where the park is the button in the middle. It makes more sense to me to have like one direction is drive, one way the other way is reverse, whichever mode that is, and then when you park, it's park. But Ford has it where the park was one of the intermediate steps, and you never know which one it is. Yeah, I almost got killed on a railway crossing in Washington State with a Ford Mach-E late at night because I was crossing a railroad, and it was dark as hell. I had headlights on, and I stopped in front of the railroad because it was like up a hill, so you couldn't really see very well. And then there's the railroad track is curved, so you can't see. So I got no music on. I'm listening for a whistle. I'm looking for lights. I see nothing. I start going, and just as I'm inching over the front of the car is over the tracks, I hear the train and I see the lights, and I'm like, oh shit. I don't think I can, like, there's two tracks, so I don't want to take a chance to cross into another track where another invisible train might come. So I'm like, I'm going to back up. And I've got plenty of time at this point. I'm totally fine. I'm confident. And then I'm fumbling with the knob and I can't figure out reverse. And this train is coming at me. And right now it's not going to hit me, but it's going to hit the front of my car and spin me off and hurt me. And I'm freaking out. And I finally, at the last second, put it in reverse and backed out. And that to me is like, I cannot believe that the Ford people did not think of that. Now, on an EGMP car, I would have just hit rotated it all the way to the other direction that it was in, and I would have backed up, right? And with the stocks are the better solution. Like, I think that Mercedes invented this thing where you have a stalk on the right, and it's parked to push the button at the end, and it's like, I think drive is forward and reverse is down. I can't remember which one. Yeah. Like, it's intuitive to me. I have to be in the car to see it. GM does it that way on their EVs. Ford now does it that way on the Mach-E, which is great. And then, I don't know, a whole bunch of other companies do it that way.
I don't even mind Teslas now with the swiping up
and down
the swipe,
on the screen. No, that's fine too, because it's intuitive and you know it. But I feel
they've done native that across everything now, which I think is
like, right now there's this big stink about door handles that can be manually open, like mechanically open from the inside. And I get it. Like, I can see that. But nobody's making a stink about the fact that, people have literally been killed by this variety of shift mechanisms that have been out there. And nobody knows about it. Nobody's making a stink about that. And I think that's actually way more important.
And on the mechanical door handle part too, I think like this was an issue with a lot of the old cars, which are where you're seeing the issues. On new ones, it's not as much of an issue. So you're trying to adjust new cars based on old ones where these problems that caused that to be a problem in the first place have been solved. It just feels weird thinking and a little bit outdated.
I mean, it's all, as well. You know how it is.
They just blame them. They target them for everything that's happened ever. Yeah.
Tesla becomes a scapegoat for everyone. And it's just like, it's not cool. Because, there's a lot of things
deserved. The majority of it's not.
100%. I was going to say, there's some of it that's very much deserved, but this is not one of them, I think. Like Rivian doesn't do it right either. Mercedes doesn't, like, maybe Mercedes does, but some other companies have the soft open doors and don't do it right either. So let's be real here. This is happening across the industry. And I'm a little annoyed with the Chinese for banning one pedal drive. Like, that's the best freaking thing about an EV. Well, yeah. Yeah, because people have confused the brake pedal and the accelerator so much in China. There's been so many collisions where the data shows clearly that people are being stupid. And so they want people to kind of have a muscle memory of using a brake versus using the accelerator, not keep their foot on the accelerator full time, like, you tend to do when you do one pedal driving, because what happens is in an emergency, they have their foot on the accelerator, right? and they forget to switch over to the brake for the emergency, and they plow into something.
You know what?
That's
this
the
actually
rationale.
Makes sense for Tesla. Well, this actually makes sense why Tesla did brake-by-wire in the Model Y, the new one, because it's now brake-by-wire where it's all digitally controlled,
like
so you
the
can still get the
Cybertruck.
regenerative braking. Yeah, it's that on the Model Y now. So I think the first 25% of it's all digital. So even if you're pressing the brake, it's still digital control. Then if you slam it, you get back into the hydraulic backup. So that makes sense actually now doing in China like that.
Yeah, so China's starting to regulate that. And of course, that's software based, right? So, it's not going to affect us in the West unless they start regulating it here. And, I hate to say this, Americans are pretty stupid and they don't most people don't like one pedal. And I'm worried we're going to lose our one pedal. I think
it'll be an option maybe in the default. I mean, I have seen a lot of people blame the brakes going out in Teslas for accidents.
It's bullshit.
I know, in the majority, I saw a big TikTok a few days ago where someone was saying autopilot would cause them to get into an accident, and then they looked at the telemetry data and it was never activated. And this woman had said, "Oh, the brakes went out of my car. This caused me to get into a 3-car pileup." And they're looking at it and they pulled the telemetry data and the brakes were never hit. They're like, they're fine. But also, even if there's no way for the brakes to go out, because even if they did, the regenerative braking is going to pull it up at some point. So there's no way to get into these types of accidents unless you're holding the accelerator down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I honestly, I don't get it. I don't know. I think, again, there are some things that could be done better by the car industry in general and Tesla in particular. But I don't think that this, one pedal, I don't think is a problem. And I think the door handle thing is not a problem either. I think that, it was in some cars. I do think that not having any easy way to get to some sort of cable release is dangerous. But if it's just, remove the little rubber mat at the bottom of the door, cubby and pull the handle, that's fine. I think that some of them are more complicated than that. Some of them are if you need a tool to remove a piece of trim to get to it, that is or a fingernail or something, that's starting to be a little rough.
I don't mind the front door latch Tesla has. I actually think that's fine. Maybe they should move that to the back door. They should probably move that to the back door, but I'm not upset with it being...
Exactly. I think they should move that to the back door 100%. That would be the smart thing to do, especially when
over time it can damage the car though, so especially in the back seat where people don't know.
The kids in particular, they're just going to pull
maybe
that
hide it underneath or something where you don't see it.
Well, Rivian has a mechanical override on all 4 doors on the new Gen 2 R1 vehicles, so it's a push button by default. But if you look carefully on the door, there's a clear, obvious way of opening it.
Is it Mercedes? It's push button, but if you push down really hard, it gets into mechanical?
Correct. Also on Mercedes, when the door handles are extended, if you physically pull, it will mechanically release the door. There's actual physical connection. So if the car has power, if there's some kind of mechanism that prevents you from physically pulling the cable, and that if there's no power, that's thing just defaults from using a spring or something to letting you fully pull the handle and actually mechanically release the door. So in a crash, technically on a Mercedes, what would happen as soon as the airbag sensor gets triggered, the door latches get opened, they get extended, and then if an emergency personnel came to that door at that point and the 12-volt power had somehow gone out, and I saw Mercedes earlier this week for something, and they went through this in great detail with me about how they are actually making sure the 12-volt system survives as long as possible in their cars, because it's becoming so critical these days. If you pull the handle at that point and the 12-volt is gone, it has somehow mechanically released some sort of interlock mechanically that lets you actually pull the handle beyond the short travel it normally has and pull the cable and actually unlatch mechanically the door. It's really smart. But if you have power and you pull on it, it's just a little pull, and that activates a micro switch that then releases electrically the door and does the window roll down thing, if you have frameless windows or whatever. Oh God, we're in the weeds, man.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Let's get back to Rivian and some of that stuff. So what about the assistant? So they showed off. So here's the thing that's interesting. I was in a car earlier this week from Mercedes. I can't tell you what it is, but where they showed me an assistant, and I used the assistant. They said you can ask it anything, and I figured it's either tied to ChatGPT on the back end or Gemini or something. And I did a good one. I said, describe a black hole as if I was 10 years old, right? And it did. It did a really good job. It told me, imagine a giant vacuum cleaner in space that sucks all the planets and stars near it inescapably. And that's basically what a black hole is. A very strong gravitational pull. And I was like, this is great. So I asked the Rivian assistant the exact same question yesterday in the demos, and I got the exact same answer, meaning that they're using the same LLM in the back end, whoever that is. They didn't want to tell me. Neither did Mercedes. So I'm like,
so part of the
now I want to ask both ChatGPT and Gemini this question so I can see if I get the same answer.
I have a suspicion of who it is. I think it's Gemini because
I think it's Gemini too.
Because they had like all of the Rivian stuff about it. They said they're working closely with Google for Vertex,
the calendar and all that.
Frame.
Yeah,
and like they already use Google for everything basically. And it runs Android Automotive. It's like a custom fork of Android Automotive. I think it's Google. I think it's Gemini. It's
got to be because they're using Android Automotive without DAS, which is the Google Automotive Services, which is like the GMS equivalent. And the other thing that was interesting is, Wasim, the head of software at Rivian, he was one of the contacts in all the demo cars as well. Now, was it really his phone that was the contact? Not sure. But we had a lot of fun with that in the demo because I kept sending messages to Wasim with stuff. So I asked the assistant in the Rivian, I said, tell me more about the music that's currently playing. And so it did. And then I said, send a playlist of similar music to Wasim. And it did. It assembled a playlist. Cool. Of similar music, showed me the playlist, and then sent a link to it to Wasim as a text message. I was like, now that's the kind of integration I'm talking about. I mean, the calendar stuff, yeah, I've seen that before. That's not like that crazy, like the demo they did. But yeah, they were very good at letting us try really, really wonky stuff with the assistant, and it worked most of the time. It's interesting that it can do some physical things in the car, but not others. Like, for example, for safety, you can't control windows and doors. But you can, if you're in park mode, you can control the frunk. So you can tell the assistant to open the frunk and close the frunk. But only if you're in park, obviously. There's an override there. But the windows and doors, even if you're in park, you cannot control. Like, there's no way to open them by voice. Interesting, right?
I mean, that makes sense.
To some extent.
You don't want it accidentally hallucinating a tool call.
Right. But the frunk is interesting because I'm like thinking to myself, okay, edge case scenario here. What if somebody is with like a bullhorn megaphone outside the car and you're just stopped and parked your Rivian and you're, like they want to steal what's in your frunk and they start yelling, hey, Rivian, open the frunk. And then they, by the time you realize what's going on, the frunk's open, they grabbed your bag. Wonder if that would happen. So I asked them about things like, can it distinguish between, like, can you lock some functionality based on the recognizing which speaker it is? Because you know how Gemini Home now does that, or it's always done it for calendar, for example. Yeah. Even with Google Assistant back in the day, you could say, hey, tell me what's on my calendar today. And then my producer, Theo, would say the same thing. It would be their calendar because we're both on the system and it recognizes our voice, even though it's the same speaker, right? So I think stuff like that, ask them about stuff like that. Like also we asked one of the journalists that covers more like mainstream car stuff was like, hey, what if you're sitting in the third row and you ask the assistant, can he hear you back there? Because I don't know if there's microphones on the third row. Because, you obviously want everybody in the car to talk to the assistant. I mean, that's the future, isn't it? But I was honestly pretty impressed with the demos on the assistant. Yeah. What are your thoughts from what you saw? And do you think, I haven't really played with the assistant in my Tesla, obviously, since I haven't had one for a year and a half. Like, have they done any progress in that area?
So,
because it was always janky.
Two separate ones. You have the voice assistant, which is more or less the same. It's gotten a little bit better, but a little janky.
And it can do physical things, right? Like it can control temperature and stuff. Yeah.
But it's the same. You have to be very specific about what you're saying. Then they added Grok to it. Grok is the same as the mobile version. It's actually not bad. It's not going to do all the stupid whatever stuff. It's more tuned as a normal chatbot. It's very nice. It's like, it hallucinates every once in a while. It's not the best experience where it doesn't, once you close it and reopen it, it loses your history. So you don't get that memory. So it has to be a continued conversation. Sucks. It can't control the car, but in the holiday update, it can do navigation. So you can describe kind of what you want, or you can have it do multi-chain, chain of destinations together. So they're starting to add more control over the vehicle.
Yeah, they showed us a demo where you could, say, navigate from where we were, which was Rivian Palo Alto's office, to, say, Lake Tahoe. And then, after it set the nav, and you can ask it things like, so how many charging stops do I have and how long will I be charging? And it'll tell you. And then then you can get more complicated. Say, can you find a coffee shop near the first charging stop? Like, so it has context. It's interesting. Yeah. It did kind of fumble on that one, but it's supposed to be able to do it. So, again, early demos. But I think this is the kind of stuff that I think really matters. If you're an EV driver like I am and you are, I've done a ton of road trips in my Teslas. And, sometimes you end up at a supercharger where you don't know, like, are the stores nearby going to be open because it's like midnight? And can I use the bathroom anywhere nearby? So you kind of want to, like, maybe being able to not have to have a second person in their phone looking at Google Maps to see if the businesses nearby are going to be open. And instead just talk to it and say, hey, so is there a bathroom open in that area? And it knowing somehow, because Tesla has that data technically, right?
Yeah.
When you pull up a station, it shows you like how busy is it over time, what the cost is over time. It gives you the access code to the lounge if there is a lounge, like at Kettleman Station on I-5 between San Francisco and Los Angeles. There's a lounge there and it's not open 24 hours. So if it's closed, you want to use the bathroom, you need a code to get in. The code is displayed on the touchscreen of your car, which is insanely cool, and also on the app, which is also, and it changes, of course, this code. And so, like stuff like that, I think this is a kind of integration where an assistant could come in real handy. So I'm hoping they're going to add some of that.
Yeah, I think it looks great. It will have its issues. Every LLM based anything will. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but I think they're probably the best in the industry right now at that. That just was very easily leading everyone else on a personal automotive assistant. It does use cloud models, but at the same time, who cares if it works? It works.
It does have a lot of stuff, not a lot, but it has some stuff that runs locally. It says that, like, for a lot of the local, like, you want to turn on the temperature and stuff, that all happens locally.
Yeah, all that. It's just the LLM that's going to handle your
There's some small models running on device, and then there's so Edge AI, and then there is like like when asked about the black hole, that obviously went to, I think, Gemini, as you said.
Yeah.
Hey, let's move on to some news, because we're like nerded out for a while here. I want to show folks, if you're on Patreon, this is where you get to see the cool stuff. I got two phones to show you today. One I can't show you too much, and the other one I can show you a little more. This here is the OnePlus 15R, and it is very pretty. I can only show you the home screen, so I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to turn it off so that we can show you the rest. So this is the kind of like greenish color. As you can see, there's only two cameras on the back. Well, I don't know what the specs are. I think I can tell you, but yeah, it's nice, right? Antenna bands, so you can draw your own conclusion about what materials are being used here. So there you go. That's the OnePlus 15R, OnePlus logo there. Very nice. So if you're watching on Patreon, you get the podcast in advance, a day in advance, every week for $5 a month. So please consider helping me support me on Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. The other phone I want to show you this week is this crazy community edition Nothing Phone 3. And it's pretty cool. It's very colorful. It's very 90s colors, like the Solo Cup with the magenta, lime green, and kind of this turquoise color. That's basically the vibe. So this is not the 3A Pro. This is the regular 3A with the non-OIS 2X telephoto, which is a bit janky. Now I'll put OIS on a telephoto, but I like the look of it. It's cool. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually like translucent, like matte. It's not reflective, unlike the other, the normal one. The normal one has like this super shiny glass, and so everything under there, all the screws and stuff, are diffused by this kind of like opaque kind of layer, which is really kind of interesting. And then the little highlights, like this is actually not red like the actual normal phone. It's actually the same kind of magenta or whatever. And then it does come with, obviously, a matching theme, which is cool. But it's the same phone, right? Like this is just as a point of reference, this is white plastic as the the other one. But the buttons here are black, and then the AI button is this cool magenta. This is the power button. So yeah, they did a pretty good job with this. I don't know why they sent me this. I think to show it on the podcast because it's so visually interesting. This is the same Nothing Phone 3A that was launched earlier this year in terms of spec. Sometimes they've done some upgrades on the Community Edition, but not this time. So, 7S Gen 3, I don't know how much, like 8 or 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, 1080p, 120 hertz OLED, and then a 50 megapixel OIS main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 50 megapixel 2x non-OIS telephoto. And I think, 5,000 milliamp hour battery.
Yeah. It's a good cheap phone.
45 watt charging, something like that. It's fine. Actually, speaking of which, I don't even know what the price is.
I think that was like $380.
Is it still $380 now? Well, look it up, folks, because it's out and it's available in the US. So that's the best I can do for you. I'm sorry. I should have researched this a little better. Okay. And then in the terms of other news of the week, we have some new phones. Not too many. Speaking of the OnePlus 15R, OnePlus India did release the battery size on this phone. Now, technically, it's not official in US, but India, a lot of you are in India. So this phone has a 7,400 milliamp hour battery, which is 100 more than the OnePlus 15. And it's a lot less than its sibling or twin in China, the OnePlus Ace 6T, which has 8,300 milliamp hour battery and is essentially the same phone. So why do you think that is? I mean, it's a dual cell, so it's not a restriction in terms of cell size. Do you think it's just cost? Yeah.
It could be cost. It could be silicon content in it that causes some issues. So maybe they want the more reliable ones globally and then China. Because the other thing is all these companies have huge repair networks in China. So if something happens, it's much easier to fix than anywhere else. And so they take more risks in China.
It could also be that they can't pass the TÜV Rheinland battery certification. This is probably required for the West, and they don't have to worry about that in China, right? That's another thing I'm thinking of. I mean, they might pass it, but it's more iffy because, as you said, silicon content, all that stuff. Anyway, so now we know that. Also that OnePlus Pad Go 2 is getting a 10,050 milliamp hour battery. That's also from the OnePlus India site. This is a tablet that's coming sometime. I don't know anything about it. It's an affordable tablet from OnePlus. It's coming on the 17th of December alongside the OnePlus 15R, so stay tuned for that. Realme is just cooking right now. Every month I get a phone from them, literally. And it's always 7,000 milliamp hour or more, whether it's like a $250 phone or like their flagship, the Realme GT8 Pro is a really awesome phone. It's the better OnePlus 15, to be honest.
It feels like Realme kind of took OnePlus's spot and OnePlus took Realme's.
100%. You nailed it. That's totally true. But the latest Realme is coming. We don't know the details yet, but there's a 16 line coming. So every year they have, sometimes twice a year, a numbered version of their phones. And it's a mid-range phone. And it comes generally with a Realme X, so like the 16 in this case, a Realme 16 Pro, a Realme 16 Pro Plus. And, mid-range phones, blah, 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 who cares? They're nice, they're Realme, they're running Realme OS, which is basically Oxygen OS / Color OS. In that sense, they're very nice phones. They're not very expensive. They're pretty great. But the Plus, that Pro Plus that comes out every year or twice a year when they increment that number, is always an imaging-centric phone, which is really cool because you're getting almost the Realme GT level of camera system with like a periscope telephoto and the whole OIS stack and the 50 megapixel sensors and the whole imaging, pipeline that they have in their flagship, but with like, an LTPS display and like, a slightly smaller battery. And although that is probably not going to be the case this time because they've been putting really large batteries in their mid-range phones. And then you get a lesser processor, like you get like a 7S Gen something, or you get like a 7300 MediaTek, right? You get like a plastic frame instead of a metal frame or something. And I'm on board with that because like if you don't care too much about playing game performance, blah, 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 you want a good solid phone with good solid software that takes really good photos. Nobody really has that. I mean, the closest we have that in the West is like the Pixel 9a maybe,
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a telephoto.
iPhone 16e.
Well, the iPhone 16e doesn't really have much in terms of imaging other than the main sensor being pretty solid. Like you don't get the
selfie
telephoto.
Camera and main sensor are good, but that's, I mean, it's the same as the Pixel though. It's same
idea. So stay tuned for that because I'm probably getting that phone. They seem to be sending me everything. So I kind of dig it because I like to take photos. And then we have, remember that Honor robot phone that they showed like, what was it, September or something? That has like a little...
IFA, yeah.
IFA, yeah, thank you. It has a little, basically a little stabilized... gimbal built in, and it unfolds from the phone. It's gonna be a product. I kind of knew when they showed it as a concept that they might make a product, but now it's official. Yeah. They're making a product out of it. So are you excited? Because I'm excited as hell about this. I think it's super cool. Yeah. I want it so bad.
What was it? The Honor V Purse did, and then like 3 months later launched in China.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right.
They usually launch these concepts. It's always.
I think this is. I'm really excited about this one. I just love the idea. And also the way that they called it a robot phone and kind of gave it a personality in that video demo that they did. It's kind of cute. I love how China does some fun stuff like that.
It's gimmicky, but it's a fun gimmick.
Absolutely. Huawei Mate X7 is now available globally. I will actually link, Ben Sin just did an unboxing and a full review of it. Oh, nice. And as you know, Ben is always really good video guy to watch. What's interesting about this phone is that it is running with the best of the folding phones, like the, Oppo Find N5, which is my favorite this year. Like for a lot of you are very, very happy with the Z Fold 7 from Samsung, and rightfully so. It's a great phone. This is kind of the same league in terms of thickness, weight, and features, but the cameras are up there, and that's what Ben talks about. Of course, the processor is... I think the latest from them, which is like
9300
9030 Pro.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that is, not going to be in the same league.
But the European ones, you can sideload Google software on it.
Yeah, right, because it's got EMUI. So that's another thing that Ben talks about and shows off. Micro G is a thing, and it seems to solve a lot of problems for a lot of folks. So that's why I thought I'd bring it up because, we always talk about Honor because the Magic V5 is really great. Or Oppo because the N5 is awesome. Find N5 is my muse this year, one of my top 5 phones. And of course, those of you who need to buy through a carrier because you're on a plan or you have a family plan or something, the Z Fold 7 is a phenomenal phone. So if you're looking at something like that, but you want something really different, or you live in a market like maybe Dubai where the phones are readily available and supported, I think this might be a contender simply because it looks super cool and cameras are wow.
Yeah. Next one they need is the Mate X-TS, the trifold for them.
I know.
Slightly
and speaking
upgraded.
of, we talked about this last week on the show, obviously, about the Samsung trifold, Z trifold coming. And I'm very excited about that one. It's interesting because it's just essentially a Z Fold 7 spec-wise, including the cameras from what we saw, with an extra panel thrown in and a larger internal screen. But I'm on board with that. I can live with that. Like having full Google support and everything, I can't wait. This is going to be great.
I used to be such a foldable person, and I got
what happened?
iPhone Air and a few others. And because I was looking, so here's the other thing. I was looking at the Galaxy Z Fold 7 because I think that was probably my favorite foldable. And I was using the apps and I'm like, so I can have my Google email open and I see my inbox next to the message, next to the email, but it's still the same amount of active content. All it's doing is saving me a swipe back. There was no, and then some apps like Twitter, it becomes worse because you can see less content. So the benefits of the foldable are gone because the software, even on Pixel and like the best of the best software, are still worse than just a candy bar phone. Yeah. Maybe a tablet style with the trifold fixes that, maybe, but the software is ruined.
I think for me, it's, I've said this a while now. It's the thing that really sold me was when I'm on an airplane and I don't have the physical space to pull out a laptop or a tablet with a keyboard and I want to do some writing, having that extra real estate and I'm being able to two thumb type, holding the corners, actually works nicely. And it's definitely more real. I can still do that on a bar phone. Absolutely. Even an iPhone Air or something, but it's not, I can see more of my text, scroll, kind of get more context, and it does help. I don't really use it like multi-windowed. One of my fold. I mostly use it by using more screen real estate with whatever apps are supporting it well, which, as you know, is not all apps.
Very few.
Yeah. So that's been my reason for carrying that as a second phone, mostly to kind of productivity writing because I travel so much. Other things that are interesting, before we jump into Apple and Google real quick, Jolla has a phone coming. So it's interesting because last year they had a phone coming, and I don't know if they ever launched it because they contacted me. They said, you want one? And then they never mailed it to me. So I think maybe that's the same phone and they delayed the launch or they redesigned it. But anyway, Jolla is around. They're still making a phone. It's coming. It's going to be called Jolla Phone, and it's going to have, very mid-range specs, but it's going to run Sailfish OS 5, which I've always liked Sailfish OS in some weird way. And for those of you who are really like having an odd, unusual, very cool phone, this is going to be something to look forward to. And I do like their design language. They've kept the thing going where there's like this kind of Oreo vibe, of like the two layers, and one of them has a little curved edge to it. It's cool. But there it is. It's happening. So far, we know not too much other than it's got a 6.3-inch display, so it's actually reasonably sized. AMOLED, of course, probably 1080p. 50 megapixel primary camera with a 13 ultra wide, so very mid-range. 5500 milliamp hour battery. The only thing we're not sure is if it has eSIM support. A lot of people are asking about that, and it should be coming for about 499 euros, which probably is a little high, but for a specialty phone, I'm on board. Oh, MediaTek, high performance, in quote, MediaTek SoC. I'm betting 63 or 7300. Yeah. 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, maybe 7300. Who knows? Anyway, what are your thoughts on Jolla and Sailfish? Have you ever used any of these?
No. Seems like a cool hobbyist phone.
It totally is. It runs Linux. That's the best part. Don't expect, to have all your integrations with Google here. It's not Android. No. This is going to be a completely bespoke experience. But hey, I'm on board for that. If you can afford it and you want to play with it. The previous Jolla phones I've played with, I think almost every single one over the years, over the decade or so they've been around. And, it's an interesting thing that us, analysts or journalists should check out, but I don't see any reason for it to exist. Like, I'm not, sorry, I love you, Jolla, but it's a hard sell for a main phone. Maybe a Tinkerer phone if you want to code or have a full-on version of Linux where you don't have to worry about privacy and stuff with Google stuff, and you can implement your own coding on that. That'd be kind of cool because the hardware is always pretty nice. So that's the nice thing about it. It's not like, some of these, developer phones that are like just terrible hardware, and you feel like you want to throw the thing at the wall every day. That's not Jolla. It's actually useful too. They have proper email client, so you can do the basics. Like you could connect it to your VoIP or whatever and do some calls. And who does that? Everybody uses Zoom. So
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, Google and Apple supposedly have worked together to enable easier iOS to Android and Android to iOS switching. What's your take on that article from our good friends at 9 to 5?
I know it's a thing because Apple actually added support for this in 26.2 as a developer API.
Okay.
So developers need to support it because they need to make sure their databases and user data formatting similar or transferred between the two platforms.
Got it.
But it's good. I mean, I can see why both platforms want to do it. From Apple's perspective, it helps users switch from Android to iOS.
Correct.
And from Google's perspective, it helps
them switch the other way around.
Yeah. And I understand it on both sides. Now, I think this might benefit Apple more than Google going forward. Because if you look at the iPhone 17, for example, best value phone, period.
100%. I keep saying that. I'm so glad you're saying that. Do not dismiss the iPhone 17. It is one of my top phones of 2025, 100%.
Yeah. And even if you're coming from an S25 base model, a 17 is a great phone, S24, S23, that now helps people switch to the iPhone because those $800 range, there's nothing better. Even at the $1,000 range, I mean, unless you really want Zoom, the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max is probably the best phone there too. So it helps them, but it also helps the Android manufacturers. Maybe you want something more bespoke and niche like a foldable. You got it. So, maybe there was some EU regulatory stuff in the background there, fine. And that's probably what led to the conversation in the first place. But it helps consumers, but it also helps both these companies in their own way, or they want it to, which is probably why they just
I think the big asterisk here is that developers have to support it. And, like I've seen this happen even with an Android where you transfer from one phone to another doing the Google transfer, the full on, phones are side by side kind of thing. And then like, for example, Blue Sky is really good in that. It keeps you logged in.
Yeah.
So it's like, awesome.
If you look at which platform has developer uptake, it's Apple.
I know, I get that. I'm just saying, but it's interesting. Some apps work like on an iPhone where you transfer to a new phone and everything just continues to work. But like Facebook and X and others, like you have to log in again. And this is my biggest gripe right now with restoring Android backups. I wish they were somehow encrypted either in the cloud and that you could just restore a phone and pretty much, well, of course, there's going to be some stuff that doesn't match because there's some settings that are slightly different from brand to brand. But I wish that it would just restore in a way that was immediately usable rather than you spending an hour or two relogging in and realizing, oh, I missed this app, didn't transfer for some reason or whatever. I think Google, this is nice, but I think I want Google in particular, because they're the ones who are maintaining Android for us, to give us this seamless restore functionality, as seamless as it can be with at least Android settings. I think apps is what I want to see seamlessly transfer over.
I think the problem is that then you have to get into like user data partitions and how do you do it? And like if someone can get access to your Google account and then gets your backup, do they get all of your app data now? And that's how iCloud backups
that's a risk with iOS, right? That's a risk with iOS.
And that's like when you have the FBI doing whatever investigations, they go for the iCloud backups and they want this. And that's why it's now encrypted by default and they have the advanced data protection and all this other stuff that they added to it. Like, it's just really hard to do this.
Right. But Google could, and I think they should, because this is the biggest pain point. And not just because I change phones very often, because my main phone doesn't actually change more than once a year. But it's just like I have a subset of data on my review phones, right? Like I have all my social, I have no on my banking, but I have my social media stuff. So I'd love to have that.
Allow it to give you the encryption key. It's your password, your encryption key. You do what you want. Just keep the data and let you do what you want with it.
That'd be great. So there you go, folks. That's basically our show this week. Max, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your various social media handle, and talk to you about your creative strategies work and wherever else you might be doing these days?
Yeah. I am an analyst of creative strategy, so you can find the reports there. I'll have one on the DGX Spark from NVIDIA coming up.
Cool.
And some cool things from Apple next week. And then Twitter and Instagram is M. Weinbach, and Threads, but very rare.
Yes. So go find Max out there and go find me out there. Tell us on social what you think of this Rivian stuff and everything else we talked about. You know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankerl. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book character Tankerl. Drop all the vowels and you get my handle pretty much everywhere except for TikTok, where I decided to add my year of birth at the end because it sounded kind of silly and now people make fun of it. Call it TNKGRL69, but I'm not on TikTok very much. So, find me everywhere else, add me. And the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. So if you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing. We're on all the major platforms. You'll find me everywhere. So just add that to your app. If your app lets you review or rate the show in some way, please consider doing that. It helps with discovery. YouTube.com/mobiletechpodcast is where YouTube lives. There's some unboxings, hands-ons, reviews, that kind of stuff there. So check it out. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. And then finally, the Patreon I mentioned earlier, patreon.com/TNKGRL, same as my social media handle. You can get a video version of this podcast a day in advance every week for $5 a month. And that's the deal. And, there's bloopers. Sometimes you leave stuff in. That's because we went overtime like last week. You got an extra 13 minutes, I think, because we just went crazy with Matteo. And then, you get some visuals, right? Like these beautiful phones that I showed you earlier right here. So, consider supporting me with Patreon, patreon.com/Tankerl. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Max, thanks for joining me yet again on the show. Really appreciate you having joined me this week.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always great.
Fantastic. We'll have you on the show again in the future at some point. And folks, we will have a podcast next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.